I should have never gone inside. That's the truth of it. If I had listened to the warnings, if I had turned back when the fences tore at my jacket and the cold wind whispered through the rusted wires, maybe I would have been safe. But curiosity isn't just hunger, it's poison. And that poison led me into the asylum. The locals called it Hollow Pines. It had been abandoned for 40 years, left to rot after a fire gutted the east wing. They said the patients never left, that some died in their beds while the flames choked the hallways, others vanished in the smoke. The staff, well, no one ever said what happened to them. Their names were forgotten. Their graves, if they had any, were unmarked. I was an urban explorer, the kind who hunted decay like it was treasure. Empty factories, collapsed tunnels, schools where the blackboard still held the ghost of chalk. But Hollow Pines was different. Everyone I knew avoided it. They whispered about it like a curse, like saying the name too often would draw its attention. That's what made me want it more. I went alone, because no one wanted to follow me. It was a night in October, cold and brittle, with a half moon sitting sharp above the tree line. The asylum was swallowed in vines, its windows jagged teeth, its gates sagging like bones too old to hold themselves upright. I ducked under the chain link where it had been cut open, my flashlight trembling in my hand even though I swore I wasn't afraid. The courtyard was silent. Too silent. Not even the crickets dared to sing. The only sound was the crunch of my boots on gravel, the creak of rusted metal swaying in the wind. I stepped through the main doors, 2 slabs of wood swollen with rot, and the darkness swallowed me whole. The air inside was colder than outside, damp, heavy, like it hadn't been breathed in for decades. My light skimmed across broken tiles, overturned chairs, and a reception desk that leaned like it was drunk. Papers littered the floor, but when I bent to look, they turned to dust under my fingers. I should have left then. I should have. Instead, I whispered into the silence, "Hello?" I don't know why. Maybe I wanted the walls to echo, to remind me that sound still worked here, that the world outside still existed. But the walls didn't echo. My voice just died. I walked deeper. The first hallway stretched on too long, like it bent itself as I walked, door after door, each marked with numbers faded by time. Some were open, revealing empty rooms, a mattress torn open like a corpse, a sink cracked in half, scratches carved into paint that peeled like scabs. One door caught my light. Unlike the others, it wasn't open. It wasn't even closed in the normal sense. It had been barricaded, rusted chains wrapped across it, padlocks dangling like tumors, and painted across the wood in something too dark to be paint were the words, "Do not unlock." I laughed nervously, telling myself it was just old vandalism, kids with too much time. But my hand itched to touch the chains. That's when I heard it, a sound, not the wind, not the groan of wood, not my own steps. It was a knock from inside that chained door. 3 slow, deliberate knocks. I froze, my throat burning with a scream that wouldn't come out. My light shook across the floor, and for one fragile second I prayed it was an echo, that somehow I had moved and sound had bounced back. But then, another knock, louder, and then a voice, a whisper, so faint I almost thought I imagined it. "Help me." I stumbled backward, my spine hitting the wall. I told myself it was a trick. That sound travels in strange ways inside old buildings, that maybe someone else was exploring. But deep down, my bones knew the truth. No one was here but me, and something else. I ran. Not out of the building, I should have, but I didn't. My pride, my arrogance, my hunger for proof drove me forward, deeper into the asylum. My mind whispered lies. If you find the source, if you record it, if you show the world, then it will all be worth it. But the deeper I went, the less the asylum felt like a building. The halls bent, the ceilings lowered, the air grew thick, almost syrupy, like I was wading through time itself. My flashlight caught glimpses of movement, shadows that slid just out of reach. A hand retreating behind a corner, a figure standing still, watching until the light touched it and it vanished. The rooms were worse. One held wheelchairs in a circle, all facing inward, as if waiting for someone to sit. Another was filled with drawings, childlike scrawls of faces, thousands of them, layered over one another until the walls were screaming with eyes. In the cafeteria, the tables were set, plates, silverware, cups, but every cup was filled with black water, rippling as if stirred by breath. I told myself I was documenting, but my camera had stopped recording. The red light blinked off. No matter how many times I pressed the button, it wouldn't start again. And still, the whispers followed. Sometimes ahead of me, sometimes behind, sometimes right in my ear. Help us. Stay. We're so lonely. My legs shook, but I kept moving, deeper still, until I reached the east wing, the one that had burned. The walls here were charred, black fingers reaching up toward a ceiling that gaped with holes. Ash coated the floor like snow. The smell of smoke still lingered, faint but sharp, and in the middle of the hallway I saw them. Beds. Dozens of them. Lined up in neat rows, each one with straps hanging loose from the sides. And on those beds lay shapes. Human shapes. My light trembled across them. They weren't bodies. Not anymore. They were husks. Skin shriveled tight over bone. Mouths open in silent screams. Their eyes. Oh God, their eyes were still wet. Still staring. I staggered back, bile clawing up my throat. But as I turned, the husks moved. Not all at once. Just small things. A twitch of a finger. A jaw that clicked open wider. A hand reaching toward me, the skin cracking like old paper. I ran. I ran blind, my light bouncing across warped walls and collapsing doors. I didn't know where I was anymore. The asylum twisted, folding in on itself, trapping me deeper. Every hallway looked the same. Every corner led me back to another locked door, and then I heard it again. The knocking. Only this time it wasn't behind a single door. It was everywhere. The walls shook with it. The floors throbbed. Every surface beat with the rhythm of fists pounding from the inside. And layered over the knocks, the voices rose. Let us out. Join us. You don't belong out there. I collapsed against the wall, sobbing, screaming that I wanted to leave. I begged, promised, cursed. My flashlight flickered, dimmed, and went out, and in the dark I felt them. Hands, cold, wet, dozens of them, clawing at me, pulling me down, fingers slipping under my skin, threading into my flesh. I thrashed, I kicked, I bit. But they held me, and then silence. When I woke, I was outside. The sun was rising, bleeding pale gold through the trees. The asylum stood silent behind me, its windows black, its walls still and lifeless. I staggered to my feet, my body sore, my mind shredded. Somehow I had escaped. Or maybe they let me go. I thought I was free, but that was last year. And now every night I hear it again. The knocking, from inside my walls. And last night, I heard the whisper right beside my bed, you unlocked the door. I used to think the city was alive only above ground. The lights, the sirens, the endless pulse of traffic and footsteps. But I was wrong. The city lives below too. It breathes through tunnels, sewers, forgotten passageways. And sometimes what breathes down there is not human. My obsession started small. Old maps, blueprints, fragments of history about the transit system that never got built. The newspapers called it the Skeleton Network, a series of abandoned tunnels meant to connect different boroughs before funding dried up. They sealed them decades ago. People said the tunnels flooded. Others claimed gangs used them until they became too dangerous. But the whispers I heard were darker. They said people went missing down there. That whole groups entered and none came back. Naturally, I wanted to see for myself. I found my entry point behind a derelict factory on the east side. The door was sealed with rust and chains, but a hole in the brickwork had opened just wide enough for me to crawl through. On the other side was a staircase that spiraled into the earth. The smell hit me first. Damp concrete, mildew, something sour and metallic like old blood. My flashlight beam cut through dust that floated in the air like ash. The deeper I went, the less the world above seemed to exist. No traffic noise, no wind. Just the sound of my breath and the drip of unseen water. At the bottom was a steel door, its paint blistered with rust. I shoved and it groaned open like it hadn't moved in years. Beyond it, the tunnel stretched endlessly, swallowing my light. The walls were concrete, wet and weeping. Pipes ran along the ceiling, some dripping. Some burst wide open with jagged metal teeth. I stepped inside. The door clanged shut behind me. The sound echoed down the tunnel, rolling into the dark until it didn't come back. I told myself it was fine. That's what I always did. I pulled out my camera, started recording, my voice shaky as I narrated what I saw. Graffiti scrawled across the walls, some of it crude tags, others symbols I didn't recognize. Circles, eyes, runes that looked older than spray paint should allow. The further I walked, the stranger it became. I found shoes, dozens of them, scattered across the floor, abandoned as if their owners had vanished while walking. A child's sneaker, A muddy boot. A pair of heels broken at the straps. But no bones, no bodies. Just shoes like a trail of ghosts. Then the tunnel split. To the left, the air felt cooler. A draft brushed my face like breath. To the right, the air grew heavier, warmer, as if something alive was waiting. My instincts screamed to turn back. My pride told me to keep going. I chose the right. The walls here were covered in mold that pulsed faintly under my light, like veins beneath skin. The floor sloped downward, deeper and deeper, until water reached my ankles. The sound of dripping turned into a steady trickle. And then I heard something else, footsteps, not mine. I stopped. My light darted down the tunnel, but it showed nothing. I called out, my voice cracking in the damp air. No response. Only the echo of my words, stretched too long, as though the tunnel didn't want to give them back. I kept walking. Faster now. The footsteps followed, sometimes close, sometimes farther, but always there, splashing in rhythm with mine until I stopped, and they didn't. That's when the water rippled. Not from my movement. From something else. Something moving beneath the surface. I raised my flashlight, sweeping it across the water. For a moment I saw nothing. Then I saw it. A hand, pale, bloated, fingers splayed wide. It broke the surface silently, then slipped back under as if it had never been there. My skin crawled. I whispered, "No, no, no," but I didn't run. Not yet, because just ahead I saw a door. Half submerged, rusted, nearly shut, but still there. I pushed against it, water sloshing up to my knees, my shoulder screaming with effort until it gave. The smell that poured out was worse than death. Rot. Decay. 1,000 corpses left to stew. And inside, my light found the source, bodies piled to the ceiling, half dissolved, their skin sloughing off in sheets, their mouths frozen open, their eyes milk white. The water carried chunks of them, pieces that bobbed against my legs as I staggered backward, gagging. But then, one of them moved, not twitched, not shifted from water. It raised its head. Its jaw snapped open and a sound poured out. Not a scream, not a moan, a chorus. Hundreds of voices shrieking together, a sound so loud it rattled the pipes and shattered something in my brain. I bolted. Through the water, through the tunnels, slipping, crashing, my flashlight bouncing. The footsteps followed again, faster this time. And in the water, dozens of hands reached for me, clawing, grabbing, pulling at my clothes, my skin. I don't know how long I ran. The tunnels twisted, bent, doubled back on themselves. The graffiti grew stranger, symbols merging into words I couldn't read, words that crawled across the walls as if alive. Eyes painted in black blinked when my light touched them, and then I tripped. I fell face first into the water. My light skittered away, hissing out as it sank. I scrambled in the dark, choking on the stench until I felt it. A hand around my ankle, another gripping my wrist. More, dozens more, dragging me down. I screamed, thrashing, but the water closed over my head. I saw them below me, faces, hundreds of them, staring up through the dark water. Their mouths opened in unison, and I knew they wanted me. I don't remember how I escaped. I woke on the factory floor, coughing water, mud caked on my skin. The hole in the wall behind me had collapsed. The staircase was gone. No sign of the door. But that night, when I finally made it home, I pulled off my boots and found something. Mud. Thick and black. Still wet and pressed into the mud were fingerprints, not mine, and they're still there. Every morning when I wake, new ones appear, crawling higher up my walls. Closer to my bed, they're coming for me. And the worst part, I still hear the footsteps every time I close my eyes. They told me the church was gone. Burned to ash 50 years ago when lightning split the steeple, and the fire spread faster than water could tame. The newspapers showed pictures of charred beams, blackened stones, a skeleton of what had once been sacred. But they were wrong. The church never died. I found it on a dare. A friend, though I don't call him that anymore, sent me a map. Not a normal map, but a photocopy of some old survey, the kind with faded lines and handwritten notes scrawled in the margins. At the center of the forest was a mark, a cross, and next to it a single word, sanctum. I'd never heard of it. But when I asked around, the older folks in town went quiet. They looked at me like I'd just spoken a curse. Some muttered about God's wrath, others about demons. Most just walked away. That silence hooked me deeper, so one night I packed my bag, flashlight, camera, a flask of water, my stubborn pride, and I followed that map into the woods. The trees grew thicker as I walked. branches nodding overhead until the sky disappeared. The deeper I went, the quieter the forest became. No insects, no wind, just the crunch of my boots on soil and the pounding of my heart. Should have taken me hours. But time twisted there. It felt like minutes before I saw it. The steeple rising pale in the moonlight. Not charred, not broken whole, the church stood as if untouched by fire. The stone walls gleamed with dew, the wooden doors heavy but intact. Ivy crept along the edges, but not enough to suggest decades had passed. It looked alive, waiting. I should have turned back. I should have, but I stepped closer. The doors opened without my touch. Inside, the air was wrong. It wasn't stale, like abandoned places usually are. It was thick, sweet almost, like flowers left too long in a vase, hiding rot beneath perfume. My light swept over rows of pews, their wood polished as though used yesterday. Candles burned on the altar, their flames steady despite the stillness, and above it all the crucifix loomed. Christ carved in stone, his face too detailed, his eyes too alive. I whispered, "Hello?" And the church answered, not with words but with sound, a low hum deep in the walls vibrating through the floor. My flashlight flickered, and for a second I thought I saw shadows in the pews, dozens of them sitting, watching. I shook my head, told myself it was imagination, but when I lifted my camera, the lens showed what my eyes could not. The pews were full. Figures sat hunched in silence, their faces blurred, their skins stretched too thin. Some bowed their heads. Others turned toward me. Their eyes glowed faint in the dark like coals waiting to burn. The hum grew louder. It became a chant. Words I couldn't understand. Layered voices rising together until the walls shook. My flashlight died. The only light came from the altar candles. And in that light, the congregation stood. Their mouths opened wide, jaws splitting too far, and black smoke poured out. It filled the air, choking, burning my lungs. I stumbled backward, gagging, tears blinding me. But the smoke wasn't just smoke, it moved. Coiled, reached, hands formed in the dark, grasping, pulling at me. I ran. The doors slammed behind me, but I didn't look back. I stumbled through the forest, branches tearing my clothes, roots clawing at my ankles. The chant followed, echoing inside my skull even when my ears heard only silence. When I finally burst into the clearing by the road, the church was gone. Only trees stood behind me, black against the dawn. I thought I was safe, but that was weeks ago. And now I know the truth because the chant never stopped. It whispers in my sleep. It drowns out my thoughts. And last night when I looked into my mirror, I didn't see myself. I saw the church, standing behind me. And inside, the pews were waiting for me.